You miss the 90s. The thing is, you weren't there. Maybe you were a toddler, or maybe you weren't even born yet, but there is still this strange, jarring sensation of feeling deeply homesick for a world you never touched. The ache hits when you see the right trigger, a wall phone with a curly cord, or a mall food court bathed in that warm, fluorescent glow. It feels like you are remembering something that was never yours to remember. But if you feel this way, you are not an isolated quirk. When researchers ran the numbers, 80% of Generation Z reported feeling nostalgic for historical periods they never lived through. There is a clinical term for this, anemoia, nostalgia for a time you never knew. That means a massive portion of a generation is walking around collectively homesick for a reality they only know through artifacts. For a long time, looking backward carried a very heavy stigma. Centuries ago, doctors actually treated nostalgia as a literal disease, a sickness of longing that deployed soldiers caught when they were far from home. That historical diagnosis evolved into a modern cultural bias. Today, there is a lingering assumption that missing the past means a person is weak, stuck, or avoidant, and that a thriving individual should only face forward. Because of that societal shame, we tend to hide our phantom homesickness. We scroll through our vintage aesthetic feeds in private, a little embarrassed by how much an imagined decade actually comforts us. But hiding this impulse blinds us to its purpose. The embarrassment prevents us from understanding the vital psychological message this longing is trying to send. Over 2 decades of clinical studies reveal that the stigma is completely backward. The science proves that nostalgia is an active, highly effective emotional tool that increases self-esteem, deepens a sense of meaning, and buffers against anxiety. This conceptual model shows how the mechanism actually functions like a psychological thermostat. When a person feels deeply isolated or unmoored, the mind automatically triggers an opposing dose of nostalgia to restore their sense of worth. The modern environment provides the perfect vacuum to trigger that automated immune response. You grew up inside a feed, constantly reachable, and have rarely experienced a day with completely uninterrupted attention. Against a constant barrage of notifications and noise, the unlived past looks incredibly safe. It offers a romanticized slowness where you could wait for photos to develop and actually be unreachable. The longing for these older decades maps onto the specific friction points of the digital age, representing a reach for ownership over one's own time. The precise historical era a person romanticizes correlates to the specific psychological pressure points of their modern life. Take the cottagecore subculture. This aesthetic functions as a remedy for someone completely burned out by modern speed and digital noise. Baking bread and wearing soft linen represents a deep fantasy of intentional slowness and absolute self-sufficiency. Then look at the Y2K aesthetic. That impulse acts as an entirely different prescription, heavily appealing to individuals weighed down by a constant sense of modern doom. They reach back to frosted tips and glowing chrome technology. It is a return to the last cultural moment where the future looked optimistic, right before it became frightening. These internet aesthetics serve as deeply human attempts to self-medicate by borrowing a specific mood. All of this raises a central clinical paradox. How can a human brain form a vivid, emotional memory of an event it never biologically experienced? The psychological mechanism is called culturally transmitted memory. Through music, posters, and movies that get recycled and remixed over time, these details become part of your internal psychological furniture. Adopting these shared inherited memories allows isolated individuals to signal what they value and instantly find a scattered tribe online. We take a past constructed entirely out of secondhand stories, and we use it to anchor ourselves in a deeply disconnected reality. There is a psychological trap here. A healthy aesthetic appreciation can easily curdle into a rigid set of rules, becoming a consumer checklist of things you must buy to feel valid. When the imagined past becomes a permanent hiding place, it turns into a way to avoid the messy, unfinished work of living your current life. An escape hatch is only a healthy psychological tool if you eventually come back through it to face the present. The next time you feel that pull toward a past that was never yours, drop the shame. Instead, purposefully analyze what your unlived decade reveals about the needs you are ignoring right now. You can self-medicate without time travel. You can put the phone away, take the long way home, and deliberately build a physical, analog corner into your routine. This chart tracks exactly that movement. Roughly 63% of Generation Z are already making a deliberate effort to disconnect and reduce their screen time, showing a steep upward trend compared to older generations. The mind's ability to borrow the past to survive the present is not a delusion. It is a brilliant evolutionary trick. Leave a comment below and tell us which unlived decade you ache for. Identifying the costume is the first step to understanding your own identity. That phantom nostalgia functions as a distress signal sent from the present, trying to keep you whole.